Hey fellas, I'm going to paint some fuel drums. The guy that I'm building these series, I'm such an idiot. The guy that I'm building these, the series of 32nd scale German jets for, he had sent me these AFV Club 1/35th scale fuel drums. And I finished those up and I posted some, or I had some, included those pictures with the last build that I did on the Comet. And I had a couple people ask me to show how I painted those. Well, fortunately, the guy had sent me some more fuel drums to build and paint. And these are Tamiyas. I don't like them as much because they're a lot easier to put together than the AFV Club ones. These come in halves and you have to put them together, but then you have a seam line. The AFV Club fuel drums, they come in 3 different sections. 3 different like circular tube type sections, and you just put them together and there's no seam line cleanup. So, and it's not like you have to be real particular with cleaning up seam lines on these because you're going to be weathering it and making them nasty anyway. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to paint them up and weather them, and there are 1,000 different ways to do this, and it's just experiment and see what works best for you. You can use salt method for chipping. You can use, there's just a number of different ways to do it. But I'm going to show you an easy way to do it that I like on stuff like this, especially on things that you have to build a lot of. So I'm not going to worry about like doing chipping fluid or anything like that. All my chipping is going to be done with sponges. And I think that's the best way to go on something like this where you kind of have an assembly line type situation. So let's get on with the video. All right, fellas, let's take a look at what we got going on. So, as you can see, I've already primed these with Mr. Servicer 1500 in gray. And then I took some black and I did some pre-shading along the ribs, the top, and the bottom. Now, next what I'm going to do is I've got some, like a real dark rust color mixed up in my airbrush. And I've got, let's see, I've got this rust mixed up. It was some brown mixed with red and a little bit of black. And then I just darkened it up with some black. So I've got a real dark color. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to spray both ends with this rust color, with this real dark color. Because these are the ends that are going to catch the water and become most rusty. So I'm just going over each one of these and spraying just the ends with this real dark, rusty color. Just like so. And you don't have to be neat. If you get some on the sides, it's no big deal. Because we're gonna be painting these. We're gonna be doing a lot of weathering, so it's really hard to mess these up. And since we're doing so many, it's always good to have some variation anyway. So. All right. I'll go ahead and finish the rest of these off camera, but you get the idea. Just each end with this rusty, dark rusty color. And see you in a sec. Alrighty, so now what I'm going to do next, I'm going to go ahead and throw some color down. So I'm going to do these over here in the dark yellow, and then these in the red and white. Now I've already sprayed the center white, and I've masked that area off. And I'm going to use, for the dark yellow, XF60. And then obviously I'm going to use the red, but then I've also got some orangish color that I've mixed up previously, and I'm going to use that, and I'll show you how I'm going to use that here in a little bit. But so I've got these separated, and we'll go ahead and spray the yellow first. Now on these barrels, you've got the top with the, I think that's called a bunghole. I don't know if you've ever watched Beavis and Butthead, where he says, "TP for my bunghole." But you've got the top and the bottom. Now, I'm not going to spray any on the bottom because that's where it's going to get the most rust, because it's next to the moisture on the ground. So I'm not even going to mess with that. And for the top, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in the center And I'm just gonna spray some in the center, kind of haphazardly. Just like so, on each one of these. I might have got my paint mixed up a little thick. And again, this doesn't have to be perfect, because we're gonna do some more rust effects. So we're just spraying the top here. Getting a little color thrown down. Just like so. And then when I come back, I'll do the same thing with the red. Now I'm gonna let these dry a little bit because I'm gonna have to grab them by the ends. So I didn't drill any holes to hold up with toothpicks. That'd have been a lot easier, but I'll do this by hand because I can actually grab on the ends and grab on the sides, just depending on how I'm painting. But I do have to let that dry. So we'll let that sit up. Okay, so now I'm gonna paint the sides. And like I said, I'm gonna grab them by, I dropped something, dropped them. I'll just grab them by the ends here, and then I can paint them this way, and I don't have to worry about, I do got this mixed a little thin, but I think it'll be okay. Now, you don't want to mix your paint so thick that it covers up all your pre-shading. You want a lot of that to show through, because we're going for dirty, grimy, weathered. So I got this mixed about right, I think. I didn't really measure it out, but I'm guessing this is probably maybe 70% paint. Wait, no, 70% thinner to 30% paint, somewhere around there. And that way I can gradually build it up. Alrighty, so these have had a good chance to dry. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do some sponge work, but it's not gonna be the rust color yet. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna break up some of this color and give a little bit different color variation by using some of my dark yellow and some white. So I'm just gonna take my pipette that had the stuff that I airbrushed. Now it is pretty thin and it's got thinner in it. So you really have to be careful when you do it this way, because what'll happen is if you go over the same spot more than once, you're likely to start dabbing up the paint, because this is the same paint that I used underneath and I don't have any protective layer on it. So you really don't want to go over this more than once. Now I've got some foam here, and I'm just going to break off a little piece, and I'm going to put it in my clampy tweezers, just like so. So I'm going to get a little bit on here, and I'm going to dab most of it off. And then I'm just going to come along and just try to break up some of that color. And this is going to dry a lot lighter than what it shows right here, or a lot more translucent. So it's just going to give a little bit different color variation. Just like so. And you want to be, and what I like to do with these is, you know, I'll put some down and then I'll twist it and turn it so I don't have the same pattern of my sponge. And maybe I'll use different sides of the sponge to do it. And that's going to give a little bit of a speckled look to it. And it doesn't take much. I don't want to be pressing real hard when I do this. Just try to be random. And this is fun for me. I like this kind of stuff. I really think it's fun. I like sponging. I'm a spongy type guy. And you don't see me going over the same spot more than once because I don't want to be lifting up any of that paint underneath. Not that it's really going to make that much of a difference on this, but just as a general rule. Okay. Whoa, got too much. See, I got too much on there. It's okay. Some can be more than others. This one's just going to be a little more speckled. Which is fine. It's all good. It's all good. Got a little bit of a spot there on this one where my glove touched it. That's okay. Whoa, look at that. Oh man, I'm just making mistake after mistake. But there are no mistakes. And if you don't like it, you can always take your airbrush and touch it up and cover up what you think are mistakes. I think they're fine. All right. Now with the red color, instead of mixing the red with white, what I like to do is mix it with yellow. So I've already got some mixed up. It's a bright orange. Now you got to be careful with this because it can look kind of dorky. So I've got a new piece of foam. And I'm just going to go around and do the same thing, but with the orange color. And just make that look. This doesn't show up as well at first on the red, but when you look closely, there is a difference. It may not initially show up, but it just tones down that red and gives it that little bit of variation like it's weathered metal. And I'm not using a lot. Just like so. My kid's up there arguing with my wife, apparently. She doesn't like mornings, I don't think. Okay. Yeah, there's my other one, yelling. I don't know what my kid's problem with mornings are. I think I just got spoiled little bratty kids. Okay. Almost done with this one. And then we can move on to rusty stuff. And that's always fun. All right. All right, what we're going to do now is I'm adding some rust, and I'm using MOMIG's Rust Effects. Now this is I believe it's a water-based acrylic, and I'm going to sponge this on. So I don't have to worry about it lifting up any of my Tamiya paint underneath, because I think the Tamiya is like an alcohol-based acrylic maybe, but it's not going to lift it up, so I've got a lot of leeway. Now this comes with a range of colors, and I'm using the darker color, which is a chipping fluid, or the chipping color, the old rust, which is a more brown, and then the medium or dark rust, which has got more of an orange in it. Probably need to put some more of this in here on my palette. So you can see I've already worked on a couple of them. And what I like to do is I like to work from dark to light. So I'm going to start with the chipping color, which is this real dark brown here. And I got my sponges. So let's get a little bit of this dark brown, which is my chipping color. I'm going to come along the top here where we had sprayed the yellow up here. And this stuff does dry rather quickly. And I'm just going to go along the edge and along the edge down here, especially along the bottom where it's going to get more rusty, where it's in contact with the ground. Just try to keep it random, kind of like I did before I moved my thing around. Come along the edges here, and it's okay if you get it where you didn't necessarily intend it to be, because it's fine. Okay. Now I'm going to come back with the old rust, which is the more brown. Get a little bit on there, dab a lot of it off. And let's see. We'll come in here and add a little bit of this brown. Just like so. Man, it's a beautiful day here, fellas. Okay. Now I'm going to take some of the orange rust, or the more orangey stuff, which is they call it dark rust. And I don't want I basically want to use this as a highlight color. I'm going to come along the edge, so I assume the orangey is like a more newer rust. So I don't want to put a lot of this on there. I just want to add a little bit of highlights, like it's a little bit newer. Now we are going to come back and use some oil paints and stuff and do some washes. And so this isn't the final step. I guess it could be if that's the way you want to go, but all right, just like that. Okay, so I'm going to get on with, let's add a little bit of more orange stuff up here. Whoa. All right, maybe add a little bit brown in there as well, guys. So it's fun because you just kind of play with it. There we go. That looks kind of cool. So I'm going to get on with adding my rust just on the edges here and there, just to get where, just whatever looks right to me at the time. And then I'll put a clear coat on it, and then we'll come back and do some oil work. All right, what I'm doing now is I'm doing an oil wash. So I've got some oil paint put in here, and I'm using sepia, which is a dark brown type of oil paint. And I've got some mineral spirits over here. And I'm basically just thinning this down and making a wash out of my oil paint. And you can see here it's kind of glossy because I put a protective clear coat over it using Pledge Floor Care, or Future for you guys that are old school. And I'm just going to smear this all over. And then once it dries, I'm going to wipe away. And it's going to stay in the crevices and give it just a grimy look, which is what I'm going for, since these are going to be outside and they're not well maintained, they're not well taken care of. So this is going to be a pretty simple part. And all this actually is actually pretty simple. I mean, there's no rocket science to this. So we'll just do a couple here. And you can see this goes pretty quickly. I do like to let this stuff dry before I try to wipe it away. And we'll come back and I'll show you how easily it wipes away and how you can manipulate it and play with it. For some of you new guys that have never done washes before. Now with acrylics, because I know I got a lot of guys that are newer back in the hobby from being gone from it a long time. You can put these enamels or oil paints over top of most acrylics. So this is why I use this Pledge floor care. Now I could have probably not done this, but I really wanted a glossy finish as well, because I don't want this to be totally stained. If I put this over a flat coat, it's just a lot harder to remove, and it's going to really change the color. And I don't necessarily want to change the color that much. I just want to add a little bit of dirt and grime and highlight some of those recesses with this with a darker sepia color. So I'm just smearing it all over here. And because it is a nice dry day, windy day, I've got the window open. It shouldn't take too long for this to dry. There we go. Not being neat with it, and I can touch it. It's not going to hurt anything. I do have my gloves on because I don't want my fingers all stained. But that's pretty much it. Now, once these dry, we'll come back and I'll wipe it off and I'll show you how easy that is, and we'll move on to the next step. All right, now that they've had a chance to dry, I've been working on them a little bit. I'm just going to take a Q-tip and I'm going to go along and just start cleaning up some of these open areas right here. And it gives it a nice grungy, dirty look where it almost fades into the recessed areas here and just gives a little bit more depth. A little bit more grunge, a little bit more dirt. And I just like the look of it. Sometimes that's all that matters. And then we'll come along the top. And I'm just going to try to wipe away the majority of it here in the middle. So we get it fading out and we got a nice dark area around the top. Get a new Q-tip. Start wiping this away. Leaving just a little bit along the edges. It's not as noticeable in this darker red, but all these colors will lighten once I throw a flat coat on there. They should all lighten, and all this work we're doing should pop out and look pretty cool. I see some of that still isn't dry in there. No big deal. And we can actually leave some of it if we want. Leave a little bit more on some and take a little bit more off others. This is going to give a really dirty, grungy look. And then on the top, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wipe away what's in the center and leave it real dark around the edges. See, on this one, just wipe some of that away. Now once I'm done with this, I'm going to go ahead and throw a flat coat on it. I probably won't do any more. I like the way these are looking. Now I could come in with some rust colors and some streaking, but I don't think I'm going to do that with these. But I will come back in with some fuel stains, and I'm going to add some different sheens to this. Like some of the fuel is leaked out, and play with that a little bit. So I will throw a flat coat on these as soon as I'm done, and then we'll hit it with that with some fuel stains. All right, fellas, I'm going to add a little bit of pigment to the the bottom of these barrels. So I've got them flat coated, and I've got some pigment here, and what I'm using is Ammo Mig Dark Earth pigment. And I've just got a little bit in my cup, and I'm going to go along the bottom, and I'm going to brush this on liberally. And I don't care if it falls off. I'm going to be adding some pigment fixer to this. And it gives a nice little effect, because these will get more dirty along the bottom here where they're sitting in the dirt. So then I'll take some pigment fixer from Ammo Mig as well. And I'm just going to go along and get some pigment fixer on there. I don't want to brush it. I'm just applying it. Just like so. Like that. Set this aside. Here's one that's already dried, and we'll compare it. And because we have a lot going on, it's not something that's going to stand out immediately, but it just adds a little bit more depth to our little creation here. So we'll go ahead, do it again. And I just like this dark earth. It's kind of a muddy, old rusty type pigment. Again, I am not brushing it because I don't want to wipe away the pigment. I just want to fix it, and it'll kind of crawl and move around, and it'll automatically become random. Make sure I got the bottom here. Okay. All right, so that's that. Once those dry, then we'll come back, and I've got some fuel stains and fresh engine oil. So we'll see what these do to it. And I think we should be done after that. All right, well, I keep adding stuff. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna add a hint of metallicness with some Ushi Van der Rosten powder. Now you can use this, you could probably use some graphite or like gunmetal pigment, but I like this Ushi Van der Rosten stuff. So I've got a little makeup applicator because in my spare time I like to put makeup on. Look pretty for you guys. So I'm just gonna get most of it off here. You don't need much. Now, when you do this, this has to be the final step. You can't be putting a clear coat over top of this. So just along the edges on some of these barrels, I'm gonna take this and I'm going to rub this in. So there's just a hint of it being metallic, like it was worn through the rust, like maybe somebody had handled it or something. And just on certain areas. And it's going to give that little extra hint that it's metal. Do it on this one as well. This will probably show up more because this is a little darker. Just rubbing it in. And not the whole thing, just on some parts of it. Now I still am going to add the fuel stains, but I'm going to avoid the areas, especially around the edges here. I'm not going to put, and if I do, it's fine. It'll just go over top of it. And I mean, you just can't, once you put this on, you can't put any clear coats on it. You don't want to put pigment fixer on this. It doesn't work. So it's just kind of a little last minute thing that I like to do with a lot of my rusty weathered stuff. Just like so, just in a couple different spots. And maybe right down here on the bottom. Just like that. Okay. And so, yes, fuel stains are up next. Okay, so now I'm going to add some fuel stains. And what's neat about this is that it dries glossy. So, as you can see, it's kind of a, it almost looks like caramel. And this might be a little old, so it's a little thick. So I'm just going to thin it down a bit. And I'm just going to come around on just some of these. I probably won't do them all. And just add a little bit of this. Like it's seeped out on here. Right around the bunghole. It's like that. And add a little bit thinner. Now this is enamel, so I can use this over top of the acrylic and it's not going to affect my acrylic paint. Now on these where they're sideways, I'm going to come in here like it's dripped out and ran down. In fact, I may need to thin it out a little bit more to get it to look like it's run down the side maybe. So it's just gonna dry glossy, just like that, hopefully. Unless this is like super old. I've also got the fresh engine oil, which is actually just a little bit darker. So that's the kind of look you get. Now when that dries, it's gonna have a different sheen, and it's just gonna add a little bit more interest to our little fuel drum art creation. So I'm gonna get on with doing a couple more of these, and then that'll be it. Hopefully this helps you out. And like I said, there are 1,000 ways to do this, and you can go all out and do a bunch of chipping fluid and all that stuff. But for this purpose, I think this will suffice. So I'll flash up a bunch of pictures when we're done, and thanks for watching, fellas.